Whether we like to admit it or not, we do seem to value some animals more than others. This is why so many people care about the conservation of giant pandas, yet a relatively small amount of people care about the conservation of endangered sharks. We really should care about the conservation of all endangered species, but we humans tend to focus on the more iconic animals, and the animals that can help us out. There are many species on this planet that are beneficial to humans, and a lot of these beneficial species are disappearing. In today's video, I will be focusing on these creatures and their stories, as I will be going through 3 important beneficial animals that are disappearing. For our first group of animals, you can travel to pretty much anywhere around the world, as we have the bees. Bees are closely related to wasps and ants, and famously they play a very important role in their ecosystems. The best known bee species is the western honeybee, but there are around 16,000 species worldwide. Bees can come in a wide variety of shapes, sizes and colours, with the largest being around 6 centimeters long, and the smallest only being a few millimeters long. The vast majority of bee species live socially in colonies, but some bee species are solitary, and some are even stingless. The majority of bees feed on nectar and pollen, and this is part of what makes them such important animals. Almost 90% of wild plants and 75% of leading global crops depend on animal pollination, and bees are some of the best and most common pollinators in the world. 1 out of every 3 mouthfuls of our food depends on pollinators such as bees, and crops that depend on pollination are 5 times more valuable than those that don't. There are of course other animals that are great pollinators, such as beetles, butterflies, birds and even bats. However, bees are simply more effective than these other pollinators, and there are also far more of them. If bees were to completely disappear, some crops would simply prove too expensive to grow, and some plants may disappear altogether. This would mean that the availability and diversity of fresh produce would decline, and human nutrition would likely suffer. This is why it's so important that we protect bees, and unfortunately their global population is declining. There are quite a few reasons why bees are suffering in the modern world, and some of these reasons are habitat loss, habitat fragmentation, pesticides, drought, global warming, and air pollution. It's important for the planet and for humans that we help and protect these bees, and there's quite a few ways that you can do so. You can grow a bee-friendly garden with lots of flowers for them to collect nectar from, and you can also buy ready-made bee hotels. At certain times in the year, it's not rare to see a bee struggling on the pavement, and believe it or not, you can actually help these bees. If you feed it some sugar water, you can actually revive the bee, and then if you're lucky, it will happily go about its day. You can buy little containers that hold sugar water for the bees, and this means that if you ever come across a struggling bee, you can help it out. Another way you can help the bees is to buy sustainable honey, and also to buy organic produce. By supporting organic farming, you are reducing the amount of pesticides used in farming, and this not only benefits the bees, but also benefits a whole host of other insects. So hopefully with a little help, the bees will be able to bounce back, as they really are some of the most important animals on this planet. But for our next group of animals, we will be heading into the oceans, as we have the horseshoe crabs. Horseshoe crabs are generally found in marine and brackish environments, and there are currently 4 extant species. Although they are called crabs, they are not true crabs, and they aren't even crustaceans. Instead, they're more closely related to spiders, ticks and scorpions, and horseshoe crabs have been around for a shocking amount of time. The fossil record of its order dates back to 440 million years ago, and their family dates back to around 250 million years ago during the early Triassic. Part of the reason why horseshoe crabs have survived for so long is simply because they're so adaptable. They're not very picky eaters and will feed on pretty much anything they find, and this is usually small clams and crustaceans, worms and even algae. Because they have no mandibles or teeth, they crush hard food between their legs before passing it into their mouth. Horseshoe crabs also play a very important role in their ecosystem by serving as prey to other animals, as they're sometimes targeted by sea turtles, sharks, alligators, and seabirds. Although many people are aware of the horseshoe crab's existence, a relatively small amount of people are aware of how important they are. One of the most interesting things about a horseshoe crab is its blood, as not only is it blue, but it's also used in biomedical testing. Horseshoe crabs have a protein in their blood known as LAL, and this is used by pharmaceutical and medical device manufacturers to test their products for the presence of endotoxins. Endotoxins can cause fevers and can even prove to be fatal to humans. so horseshoe crab blood is very valuable and very useful. The extraction of horseshoe crab blood is quite a strange process, and looks like something straight out of a science fiction film. The blood of the horseshoe crab is only extracted from adults, and at the end of the process, most of them are released alive and to the water where they were collected from. Although this may seem like a very sustainable process, it doesn't tell the whole story, as this process is actually having a negative impact on their numbers. Atlantic horseshoe crabs are the horseshoe crabs used in this process, and although the majority of them are released alive, it does take them quite a while to recover. Around 10 to 30% of horseshoe crabs die after bleeding, and the ones that are released alive are usually lethargic, and once released they are unlikely to mate. This is just one of the many reasons why their numbers are declining, as they're also affected by pollution and habitat destruction, and in some areas they're still harvested as fishing bait. One of the things you can do to help the horseshoe crabs is to not buy any horseshoe crab products such as baits, and you can also support horseshoe crab conservation, and I will leave a few links down below. So it really is important that we protect these prehistoric creatures, as they're not only important to us, but they're also important to the ecosystem. But once again, for our next creature, we can head to pretty much anywhere around the world, as our next group of animals are the bats. Bats are among the most misunderstood mammals on this planet, as they're displayed in the media as quite sinister creatures. This reputation is of course very misleading, because although there are 3 species of bat that feed on blood, the majority of bats either feed on insects, fruits, or nectar. Not only are they very peaceful creatures, but they're also very diverse, as they're the second largest order of mammals after rodents, and bats comprise around 20% of all classified mammal species worldwide. Some of the largest bat species are fruit-eating bats, but some of the most important bats are the insectivores. Just like the bees, bats are very valuable pollinators, but they're also a very valuable form of insect control, and they're very valuable seed dispersers. As bats are so good at preying on insects, it reduces the need for pesticides. This saves farmers billions globally, and also directly benefits the ecosystem. One of the most effective insect controllers is the Brazilian free-tailed bat, as they directly benefit the cotton farming industry by feeding on pest insects. Unfortunately, like many other animals, today bats are struggling. Climate change, disease, and habitat loss are some of the main reasons behind this, and without bats, the farming industry really will suffer. Although this is terrible news for both humans and the planet, there is a lot we can still do. For one, you can make houses for the bats to move into, and you can also help bat conservation charities. Today in the UK, bats are heavily protected, and this protection has allowed half of the species to bounce back. Hopefully with a little help, more bat species can bounce back too, as we really are in need of these iconic creatures. If you think you know of any other animals that could have made it on this list, then let me know down in the comments below. But thank you for watching, I hope you enjoyed. If you liked it, please leave a like and subscribe if you want to see more videos like these. But until next time, goodbye.